The lawyer's pen scratches across the paper, and that sound, that dry, mechanical sound, is what finally makes it real for me. I'm sitting in this sterile office with its fake plants and motivational posters, about to sign away everything I built, and the person forcing me to do it is my own daughter. My name is Dorothy Mitchell. I'm 64 years old, and I never imagined the child I raised with my own 2 hands would be the one to destroy me. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began, because you need to understand how someone you love can become someone you fear. It was 3 months ago, on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. I was in my kitchen making oatmeal, the kind with cinnamon and honey that my late husband James used to love, when I heard the knock. Not a gentle tap, but an insistent pounding that made my heart jump. I wiped my hands on my apron and hurried to the door, thinking maybe something had happened to one of the neighbors. When I opened it, there stood my daughter Cheryl, 38 years old, wearing a designer suit I knew cost more than my monthly pension, her hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. Behind her stood a man in an equally expensive suit, holding a leather briefcase. The morning sun caught the gold watch on his wrist, and I remember thinking it looked heavy, like a shackle. "Mama," Cheryl said, and her voice had that sweetness she used to use as a teenager when she wanted something. "We need to talk. Can we come in?" I stepped aside because that's what mothers do. We always let our children in, even when every instinct screams at us not to. They settled themselves in my living room, the man on my favorite armchair, Cheryl on the sofa where I'd rocked her to sleep countless times as a baby. I stayed standing because something in my gut told me I needed to be ready to run, though from what, I didn't know yet. "Mama, this is Gerald Patterson," Cheryl said, gesturing to the man. "He's a real estate attorney. We're here because I've been thinking about your situation, and I'm worried about you." My situation. I looked around my small house, the one James and I had bought 40 years ago with money we'd saved dollar by dollar. The walls still held our wedding photos, pictures of Cheryl growing up, the cross my mother had given me. Everything was clean. Everything was mine. "What situation?" I asked, my fingers gripping the back of the rocking chair. Gerald cleared his throat, that official sound men make when they're about to tell you something they've rehearsed. "Mrs. Mitchell, your daughter is concerned about your ability to maintain this property. The house is quite old, and at your age the upkeep must be becoming difficult. At my age." Those 3 words landed like stones in my chest. I was 64, not 90. I still did my own grocery shopping, tended my garden, walked to church every Sunday. My hands were arthritic, yes, but they still worked. My back ached sometimes, but I managed. "I'm managing just fine," I said, hearing my voice come out harder than I intended. Cheryl leaned forward, her eyes filling with tears that appeared so suddenly, I knew they'd been waiting there, ready to be deployed. "Mama, please don't be stubborn. You know how much this house means to me. I grew up here. All my memories are in these walls. I can't stand the thought of you struggling to keep it up, or worse, having to sell it to strangers because you can't afford the repairs." There it was, hidden in the concern, the word sell. My fingers tightened on the chair until I felt the wood bite into my palms. "I'm not selling my house," I said clearly. "Of course not, Mama." Cheryl's voice was silk and honey. "That's why I have a solution. You deed the house to me now, while you're still healthy enough to make clear decisions. You can live here for the rest of your life. Nothing changes for you. But this way, when the time comes, when you need care or have to move to a facility, the house won't have to go through probate. It'll already be mine, safe and secure, just like you always wanted it to be for me." I felt something cold slide down my spine, like ice water in my veins. The way she said it made it sound so reasonable, so caring, but there was something underneath, something in the way Gerald Patterson watched me with those calculating eyes that made every nerve in my body scream danger. "I need to think about it," I said. Of course. Gerald stood up, smoothing his suit. "It's a big decision. Take your time." He pulled a card from his pocket and placed it on my coffee table. "But Mrs. Mitchell, I should mention that these arrangements work best when they're handled while everyone is in good health and sound mind. Waiting too long can complicate things significantly." Sound mind. Another stone added to the weight in my chest. After they left, I sat in my kitchen for an hour, staring at my oatmeal gone cold in the pot. The house was silent, except for the ticking of the clock James had hung over the sink 30 years ago. I could hear him in my memory, his deep voice saying what he always said when something didn't feel right. Dottie, when something smells wrong, it usually is wrong. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the bed I'd shared with James for 35 years until cancer took him, and I thought about Cheryl, my beautiful baby girl who used to climb into this very bed during thunderstorms, who used to tell me I was her best friend, who promised at James's funeral that she'd always take care of me. When had that girl become this woman in the expensive suit with the ready tears and the lawyer in tow? The next morning, I called my neighbor, Ruth Henderson, who'd been my friend for 20 years. Ruth had been a paralegal before she retired, and she understood legal things better than I did. "Don't sign anything," Ruth said immediately when I told her what happened. "Not until you get a second opinion. That whole thing about you needing to deed the house to her while you're of sound mind, that's manipulation, Dorothy. Pure manipulation." "But she's my daughter," I said, hearing how weak my voice sounded. "She said she wants to protect the house." "Protect it for who?" Ruth asked. "Because once your name comes off that deed, that house belongs to her. She can sell it tomorrow if she wants to, and you'd have no say. None." I felt my hands start to shake, the arthritis pain mixing with something else, fear. "She wouldn't do that. This is her childhood home." "Maybe not," Ruth said, her voice gentler now. "But why is she pushing so hard? Why bring a lawyer to your house without warning? If she really just wanted to help, she'd sit down with you, talk about your options, maybe suggest you both go to a lawyer together." "This feels like pressure, honey, and pressure is never about your best interest." After I hung up with Ruth, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to James's old desk in the spare bedroom and pulled out the folder where we kept important papers. The house deed was there, yellowed with age, showing both our names. I traced my finger over James's signature, remembering the day we'd signed it, how proud we'd been to own something, to build something together. That's when I found the envelope I'd forgotten about. It was tucked behind the deed, and when I opened it, I found the letter Cheryl had written to us 5 years ago when she'd asked to borrow $20,000 to start her business. "I'll pay you back every cent," she'd written. "You're investing in my future, and I'll never forget it." We'd given her the money, taken it from our retirement savings because that's what parents do. We'd never seen a penny of it back. When I'd mentioned it once, gently, after James got sick and our medical bills were piling up, Cheryl had cried and said she thought we'd given it as a gift, that she'd been too proud to accept it if she'd known we expected repayment. I'd let it go, because James was dying, and I didn't have the energy to fight. But now, sitting in that spare room with the dust motes dancing in the afternoon light, I felt something click into place in my mind. Cheryl didn't want to protect my house. She wanted to own it, and I was beginning to understand why. The next week, Cheryl called me every day. Sweet calls, loving calls, asking about my health, telling me how much she loved me. And every call ended the same way. "Have you thought more about the house, Mama? Gerald says we should really move forward soon." On the Friday of that week, she showed up at my door again, this time without Gerald. She was carrying a casserole and wearing jeans and a sweater, looking more like my daughter and less like a stranger. We ate together at my kitchen table, and she told me stories about her work, her friends, her life. It felt like old times, and I felt my guard dropping. Then, as she was clearing the dishes, she said, "Mama, I've been thinking. You remember when Daddy got sick? How hard it was to manage everything? The bills, the insurance, all those decisions?" I nodded, my throat tightening at the memory. "I don't want you to go through that alone when your time comes," she continued, her voice catching. "I want to be able to help you without worrying about legal complications. If the house is already in my name, I can handle everything. Pay the bills, deal with the bank, make sure you're taken care of. You won't have to worry about anything." It sounded so caring, so thoughtful, but Ruth's words echoed in my head. "Pressure is never about your best interest." "Cheryl," I said carefully, "why is this so urgent? I'm healthy. I'm not planning on going anywhere anytime soon." Her expression changed, just for a second. It was like watching a mask slip, and underneath I saw something sharp and desperate. But then she smiled, and the moment passed so quickly, I almost thought I'd imagined it. "It's not urgent, Mama. I just want to protect you. Protect us." She took my hands in hers, and I noticed her palms were sweaty. "You trust me, don't you?" That question hung in the air between us like smoke. Did I trust her? 3 weeks ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. But now, looking into her eyes, I wasn't sure what I saw there. "I need more time," I said. Her hands tightened on mine, just a little too hard. How much more time, Mama? We can't wait forever. Why not? The question came out sharper than I intended. If nothing's wrong, if I'm healthy and sound of mind like Gerald said, why can't we wait? Cheryl pulled her hands back, and I saw color rise in her cheeks. Fine, she said, standing up. Take all the time you need, but don't come crying to me when something happens, and the state takes this house to pay for your care. Don't say I didn't try to protect you. She left, and I sat alone in my kitchen, listening to her car pull away. The casserole sat half-eaten on the table, and I realized I couldn't remember what it had tasted like. All I could taste was the bitterness of betrayal, sharp and metallic on my tongue. If you've ever had someone you love make you question your own mind, you know the feeling I'm talking about. It's like standing on ground you thought was solid and feeling it turn to sand beneath your feet. That night, I couldn't eat. I sat in James's armchair, the one that still smelled faintly of his cologne, and I tried to think clearly. Cheryl was my daughter, my only child, the baby I'd carried for 9 months, the toddler whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, the teenager whose tears I'd dried. How had we gotten here? I must have dozed off because the phone ringing startled me awake. The clock showed 11:30 at night, and my heart hammered as I grabbed the receiver. Late-night calls meant emergencies, death, disaster. Mrs. Mitchell? The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. This is Marcus Webb. I'm an attorney, and I need to speak with you about an urgent matter regarding your property. My mouth went dry. How did you get this number? I was contacted by your daughter, Cheryl. She expressed concern about your cognitive state and asked me to evaluate your capacity to make legal decisions. I'd like to schedule an appointment with you as soon as possible. The room spun. My cognitive state? There's nothing wrong with my mind. I'm sure there isn't, Mrs. Mitchell. This is just a precaution. Your daughter loves you very much and wants to make sure you're protected. If you could come to my office Monday morning. I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the phone back in its cradle. Cheryl had called a lawyer to evaluate my mental capacity. My own daughter was trying to have me declared incompetent. The fear that had been building in my chest for weeks exploded into full panic. If they could prove I wasn't mentally sound, they could take everything. My house, my autonomy, my life. They could put me in a home, sell my property, and I'd have no say in any of it. I spent the weekend in a fog of terror and disbelief. By Monday morning, I'd barely slept, barely eaten. When Ruth came by to check on me, she took one look at my face and knew something was desperately wrong. I told her about the phone call, and I watched her kind face harden into something fierce. They're trying to steamroll you, she said. This is elder abuse, Dorothy, financial elder abuse. But she's my daughter, I said again, like those words were a prayer that could make this not be happening. That makes it worse, not better, Ruth said. She grabbed my hands, forcing me to look at her. Listen to me. You need to fight this. You need your own lawyer, someone who works for you, not for Cheryl. I can't afford... Yes, you can. You have equity in this house. You have savings. And more importantly, you can't afford not to. Ruth's eyes were blazing. What's happening right now is Cheryl is building a case that you're not competent. She's probably got doctors lined up, witnesses ready to testify that you're forgetful, that you need help. She's going to paint a picture of a confused old woman who can't take care of herself. I'm not confused, I said. But even as I said it, I felt doubt creeping in. Was I? Had I missed something? Was my mind slipping without me knowing it? Ruth must have seen that doubt in my face because she squeezed my hands harder. Don't let her do that to you. Don't let her make you question yourself. You're sharp as a tack, Dorothy Mitchell. You manage your own bills, drive your own car, take care of this house. There's nothing wrong with your mind except the poison she's trying to pour into it. That afternoon, Ruth took me to see her former boss, an attorney named Helen Garcia, who specialized in elder law. Helen was a woman in her 50s, with gray streaking through her black hair and eyes that had seen every trick in the book. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes in a leather journal. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. Mrs. Mitchell, what your daughter is doing is unfortunately common. Adult children see their parents' assets as their future inheritance, and they get impatient. They convince themselves they're acting in their parents' best interest when really they're acting in their own financial interest. But I'm not dying, I said. I'm not sick. I could live another 20 years. Exactly, Helen said. And that's 20 more years she has to wait for what she believes is rightfully hers. Some children can't wait that long. especially if they're in financial trouble themselves. My head snapped up. What do you mean financial trouble? Helen pulled out a file. She'd already done preliminary research before I arrived. Your daughter's business, the one you helped her start, filed for bankruptcy protection 6 months ago. She owes substantial debts to multiple creditors. Her personal credit score has dropped significantly, and 3 weeks ago, she took out a second mortgage on her own home. The room tilted. I gripped the arms of my chair to keep from sliding out of it. She never told me any of this. Of course not, Helen said gently. Because if you knew she was desperate for money, you'd understand her real motivation for wanting your house. I thought about the designer suit, the expensive lawyer, the gold watch on Gerald Patterson's wrist. All of it borrowed, all of it costume, all of it designed to make me think Cheryl was successful and stable when she was actually drowning. What do? I asked, and I hated how small my voice sounded. First, you do not sign anything. Second, we file a protective order preventing any transactions on your property without court oversight. Third, we schedule our own evaluation of your mental capacity with a doctor I trust to establish on record that you are fully competent. Helen paused. And fourth, you prepare yourself for the possibility that this is going to get ugly. She's my daughter, I whispered for the third time, like a mantra, like a shield against reality. I know, Helen said, and there was genuine sadness in her voice. And that's what makes this so painful. But she stopped being just your daughter the moment she hired Gerald Patterson. Now she's become your adversary. Over the next 2 weeks, I went through the evaluation Helen arranged. I sat in a doctor's office answering questions, doing memory tests, proving I could count backward from 100 by sevens, naming the current president, recalling words from a list. It was humiliating, degrading, having to prove my own mind was intact. But I passed every test. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, a neuropsychologist with 30 years of experience, wrote in her report that I showed no signs of cognitive impairment and was fully capable of making informed decisions regarding my personal and financial affairs. That report should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. 3 days after Dr. Okonkwo's evaluation, I got a letter in the mail from Marcus Webb, the attorney who'd called me that late night. The letter informed me that Cheryl had filed a petition for conservatorship, claiming I was unable to manage my own affairs due to progressive dementia and financial exploitation by unscrupulous individuals. I read that letter 4 times before the words made sense. Cheryl was claiming I had dementia, and the unscrupulous individuals she was referring to, that was Ruth and Helen, the people trying to help me. Helen filed an immediate counter-petition, submitting Dr. Okonkwo's evaluation and requesting an expedited hearing. The judge will see through this, she assured me. The medical evidence is on your side. But lying in bed that night, I wondered if evidence mattered when the person trying to destroy you was your own child. I wondered if any judge would believe a mother could see the truth about her daughter. I wondered if maybe I was the one who was crazy for not seeing this coming sooner. The court date was set for 3 weeks away. In those 3 weeks, strange things started happening. First, my bank called to inform me that someone had attempted to add themselves as a joint account holder on my checking account. The request had been denied because I hadn't authorized it, but the signature on the form looked very close to mine. Second, I started receiving bills for medical equipment I hadn't ordered. A wheelchair, a hospital bed, adult diapers. When I called the companies, they said the orders had been placed by my daughter, who claimed I was too confused to manage my own medical needs. Third, and most frightening, my doctor's office called to say they'd received a request for my complete medical records from Marcus Webb's office. They wanted permission to release them. I refused, but it made me realize how thoroughly Cheryl was building her case. She was creating a paper trail that made me look incompetent. Every denied transaction, every canceled order would be twisted into evidence that I was confused, unable to manage my affairs, in need of a conservator. And who would that conservator be? Her, of course. Always her. Ruth stayed with me most nights because I was afraid to be alone, afraid that Cheryl would show up with police, with papers, with proof I'd manufactured from nothing that I was losing my mind. Afraid that I'd wake up in a facility somewhere with strangers controlling my life while Cheryl sold my house out from under me. 1 week before the hearing, Cheryl came to see me one last time. She didn't knock. She used the key I'd given her years ago, the key I'd forgotten she still had, and I found her standing in my living room when I came in from checking the mail. "Mama," she said, and she was crying. Real tears this time, not the manufactured ones from before. Please. You're tearing this family apart. I set down the mail and stood in my own doorway feeling like an intruder in my own house. I'm tearing us apart? This doesn't have to go to court, she said, stepping toward me. We can still fix this. Just sign the deed over to me, drop the conservatorship opposition, and we can go back to how things were. How things were? My voice cracked. You mean when I didn't know you were bankrupt? When I didn't know you were trying to have me declared mentally incompetent? When I still thought my daughter loved me? I do love you, she shouted, and the mask finally crumbled completely. But I love me too, Mama. I love my life, my house, my future. And you're sitting on $170,000 in equity while I'm drowning. You're one person. You don't need all this. But I do. I need it to survive. There it was. Finally. The raw, ugly truth. So take it, I said quietly. Just take it. Stop pretending this is about protecting me or caring for me. Stop making me prove I'm not crazy. Just admit you want my house so you can sell it and save yourself. Cheryl's face twisted into something I didn't recognize. You don't understand what it's like, she said. You've always had just enough money, just enough security. You've never had to struggle like I have, never had to fight to keep everything from collapsing. I worked 40 years as a nurse, I said, feeling my own anger rising to match hers. I worked double shifts to pay for your college. Your father and I went without so you could have. We gave you everything we had, including that $20,000 you never paid back. So don't talk to me about struggle. That money was a gift, she started, but I cut her off. It was a loan. And more than that, it was trust. Trust that you broke the first time you told me you couldn't pay it back. Trust you broke again when you showed up here with Gerald Patterson. Trust you've been breaking every single day since with your lies and your legal maneuvers and your fake concern. We stood facing each other in the living room where I'd raised her, and I saw my daughter clearly for maybe the first time in years. She wasn't evil. She wasn't a monster. She was desperate and drowning, and she'd decided I was the lifeboat she'd climb onto, even if it meant pushing me under. The hearing is in 1 week, I said. After that, the judge will decide. If you want to salvage any relationship we might have left, you'll drop this petition and leave me alone. And if I don't? Her voice was cold now, all the tears gone. Then you'll find out exactly how strong your old, supposedly demented mother really is. She left, and I locked the door behind her. Then I sat down on my sofa and let myself cry for the first time since this nightmare began. I cried for the daughter I'd lost somewhere along the way. I cried for James, who'd been spared seeing what our beautiful girl had become. And I cried for myself, for the innocence I'd never get back, the belief that blood meant loyalty. That's where I am now, 1 week from walking into that courtroom, 1 week from fighting my own child for the right to keep my own life. And here's what terrifies me most. I opened Gerald Patterson's card this morning, the one he'd left on my coffee table that first day, and I noticed something I'd missed before. There was a second name printed in the corner, Patterson and Webb Legal Associates. Gerald Patterson and Marcus Webb work for the same law firm, which means that from the very beginning, from that very first meeting, Cheryl wasn't trying to help me plan ahead. She was already building her case to take me down. And I'd invited her right into my living room, served her tea, trusted her with my fears and my secrets, never knowing she was gathering ammunition to use against me. The courtroom is smaller than I imagined, and that somehow makes it worse. On television, these places look grand and imposing. But this is just a regular room with fluorescent lights that buzz too loud and chairs that squeak when you shift your weight. I'm sitting at a table with Helen Garcia on my left, and across the aisle, maybe 10 feet away but feeling like a canyon, sits Cheryl with Gerald Patterson and Marcus Webb flanking her like bodyguards. She won't look at me. That's how I know she's ashamed, at least a little bit. The daughter I raised would look me in the eye, even when she was wrong, even when she was caught. This woman in the navy dress with her hair in a bun so tight it must hurt. She keeps her eyes on the table, on her papers, on the judge, anywhere but on me. Judge Raymond Collins enters, and we all stand. He's a black man in his 60s with gray at his temples and reading glasses perched on his nose. When he looks at me, I see something in his expression. Not pity exactly, but recognition. Like he's seen this story before, played out in this very room with different faces, but the same sad plot. "Please be seated," he says, and the hearing begins. Marcus Webb goes first, and I have to admit, he's good at his job. He paints a picture of a confused elderly woman living alone in a deteriorating house, struggling to manage her finances, vulnerable to manipulation by outsiders who've convinced her that her loving daughter is the enemy. Your Honor, Webb says, his voice smooth as oil, Ms. Cheryl Mitchell is here today out of love and deep concern for her mother's well-being. Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell is 64 years old and living independently, which we applaud. However, recent events have raised serious questions about her judgment and her vulnerability to undue influence. He presents exhibits, the medical equipment orders I'd canceled, framing them as proof I didn't recognize my own needs. The bank's record of the denied joint account request, twisted to suggest I was paranoid rather than protective. He even has a statement from my neighbor, Mrs. Keating, who lives 3 doors down and who I'd thought was a friend, saying she'd seen me talking to myself in my garden and looking confused at the mailbox. I want to stand up and scream that I was praying in my garden like I do every morning, that I was squinting at the mailbox because I'd left my reading glasses inside, but Helen puts her hand on my arm and whispers, "Your turn is coming." Then Webb calls Cheryl to the stand. She walks up there like she's going to her own execution, and when she settles into the witness chair, she finally looks at me. Her eyes are red-rimmed, her face drawn. Part of me, the mother part that can't quite die no matter how hard I try to kill it, wants to go to her and smooth the worry lines from her forehead like I did when she was little. Ms. Mitchell, Webb begins, can you describe the concerns that led you to file this petition? Cheryl takes a shaky breath. My mother is everything to me. She raised me alone after my father died, sacrificed everything for me. When I started noticing changes in her behavior about 6 months ago, I didn't want to believe it at first. 6 months ago. That's a lie. 6 months ago, we were fine. We talked on the phone every week, had Sunday dinners once a month. She's rewriting history, and I can feel my hands clenching into fists under the table. What kind of changes? Webb prompts. She started forgetting our conversations. I'd call her, and she wouldn't remember we talked the day before. She'd tell me the same stories multiple times, thinking she was sharing them for the first time. Cheryl's voice breaks. And the house, her beautiful house that my father built with his own hands, she's let it fall into disrepair. The roof is leaking. The foundation has cracks. But when I offered to help arrange repairs, she became hostile and suspicious. I lean toward Helen. That's not true, I whisper fiercely. The roof was repaired 2 years ago. The foundation is fine. I have the inspection report. We'll present that, Helen whispers back. But Cheryl is still talking, still spinning her web of concern and fiction. The final straw was when I discovered she'd given a large sum of money to a woman claiming to be a paralegal, someone who's convinced my mother that I'm trying to steal from her. When I tried to discuss it with her, she became combative and accused me of terrible things. That's when I knew I had to act. The woman claiming to be a paralegal is Ruth, who was a paralegal for 23 years and who hasn't taken a dime from me. But the way Cheryl says it, you can almost see the scam artist, the predator circling a vulnerable old woman. Webb yields to Helen for cross-examination, and I watch my lawyer stand up with the calm of someone who's been underestimated her whole life and learned to use it as a weapon. Ms. Mitchell, Helen begins, you testified that you noticed changes in your mother's behavior 6 months ago. Is that correct? Yes, and yet, according to phone records subpoenaed by this court, you and your mother spoke only 4 times in those 6 months, with the longest call lasting 6 minutes. Is that also correct? Cheryl shifts in her seat. I was busy with work, but we texted. The records show 17 text messages in 6 months, most of them 1 or 2 sentences about scheduling. Does that sound like someone deeply engaged in monitoring a parent's cognitive decline? I was worried, but I didn't know how to bring it up, Cheryl says, and the tears start again. She's good at those tears. I'll give her that. Helen doesn't soften. You mentioned your mother gave money to Ruth Henderson, whom you characterized as a scammer. How much money did your mother give Ms. Henderson? I don't know the exact amount. 0, Helen says. Ms. Henderson has provided bank statements showing that she received no money from Dorothy Mitchell. Would you like to revise your testimony? Cheryl's lawyer jumps up. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is badgering the witness. Overruled, Judge Collins says. Answer the question, Ms. Mitchell. I assumed, Cheryl stumbles. You assumed, Helen repeats, just like you assumed your mother was incompetent without any medical evidence. Speaking of which, did you ever take your mother to a doctor to evaluate these concerns you claim to have had? I tried, but she refused. That's interesting because your mother's primary care physician, Dr. Marcus Thompson, has submitted a statement saying that Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell has kept every annual appointment for the past 15 years and that you never contacted his office with any concerns. Would Dr. Thompson be lying? I don't know what to say, Cheryl whispers. Then let me ask you something else, Helen says, and I can hear the steel in her voice now. Your business filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy 6 months ago, the same time you claim you started noticing your mother's cognitive issues. Is that a coincidence? The courtroom goes very quiet. Cheryl's lawyers are whispering to each other frantically. My business has nothing to do with this, Cheryl says. Doesn't it? You owe approximately $87,000 to various creditors. You took a second mortgage on your home 3 months ago. You're drowning in debt. And your mother's house, which she owns free and clear, is worth approximately $170,000. Isn't that the real reason you're here? No. Cheryl stands up, her face flushed. I love my mother. I'm trying to protect her. Protect her or protect yourself? Helen's question hangs in the air like smoke. The judge calls a 15-minute recess, and I escape to the hallway where Ruth is waiting. She wraps her arms around me, and I let myself lean into her strength. You're doing great, she murmurs. Helen's destroying them. But when we go back in, Webb has regrouped. He calls Dr. Philip Larson, a geriatric psychiatrist who testifies that even in the absence of formal diagnosis, elderly individuals can experience periods of lucidity interspersed with confusion, and that family members are often the first to notice these changes. He's never met me. He's never evaluated me. But he sits there in his expensive suit with his credentials listed after his name like a shield, and he makes it sound completely reasonable that I could be losing my mind without knowing it. Then, Helen calls Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, and the tide shifts again. Dr. Okonkwo is formidable, a Nigerian woman with 30 years of experience and no patience for nonsense. She walks through her evaluation of me in detail. The tests, the scores, the observations. Mrs. Mitchell showed no signs of cognitive impairment, Dr. Okonkwo states clearly. Her memory is intact, her reasoning is sound, her judgment is appropriate. She is fully capable of managing her own affairs. But isn't it possible, Webb challenges, that she was having a good day? That she could decline between now and your next evaluation? Anything is possible, Dr. Okonkwo says dryly. It's also possible that you could develop dementia tomorrow, Mr. Webb. Should we appoint a conservator for you just in case? A few people in the gallery laugh, and Judge Collins hides a smile behind his hand. Helen calls me to the stand next, and I'm terrified. My hands are shaking as I place them on the Bible to swear my oath. When I sit down, the room seems to tilt, and I have to grip the arms of the chair to steady myself. Helen starts gently, asking me about my daily routine, my activities, my health. I answer each question clearly, focusing on her face to block out Cheryl's presence. Mrs. Mitchell, why do you believe your daughter filed this petition? I take a breath. This is the moment. She needs money, I say. Her business failed and she's in debt. My house is the only asset she has access to, but only if she can get control of it. And if the court grants this conservatorship, she'll sell my house within a month. She'll pay her debts, and I'll be placed in the cheapest facility she can find. I'll lose everything my husband and I built. My voice cracks. And I'll lose my daughter too, because whatever piece of her still loves me will die from the guilt of what she's done. I look at Cheryl then, really look at her, and I see her crying silently. But I can't tell if she's crying because I'm right or because I'm wrong. Webb's cross-examination is brutal. He asks about my arthritis, suggesting it limits my ability to maintain my home. He asks about my social life, implying I'm isolated and lonely. He asks about my finances, and when I admit I don't use online banking, he makes it sound like I'm technologically incompetent rather than just preferring paper statements. Mrs. Mitchell, he says, his voice dripping with false kindness, isn't it possible that you're simply scared of change? That your daughter's attempts to help feel threatening because they represent an acknowledgement that you're getting older? No, I say firmly. What feels threatening is my daughter lying about me, fabricating evidence, and trying to steal my home. Objection! Gerald Patterson is on his feet. Mrs. Mitchell is making unfounded accusations. Sustained, the judge says. Mrs. Mitchell, please stick to answering the questions asked. But I can't stop now. The words are pouring out of me like water from a broken dam. She sent fake medical equipment bills to make me look confused. She tried to add herself to my bank account behind my back. She hired lawyers to call me in the middle of the night and scare me. She got my neighbor to lie about seeing me act strange. All of it calculated, all of it designed to make me look incompetent so she could justify taking everything I have. Mrs. Mitchell, Webb tries to interrupt, but I keep going. I'm not confused. I'm not senile. I'm betrayed. There's a difference. The judge bangs his gavel. Mrs. Mitchell, please step down. We'll take a 30-minute recess. In the hallway, Helen grabs my arm. That was risky, she says, but powerful. You told the truth. Now, we have to hope it's enough. During the recess, something happens that changes everything. Ruth comes running down the hall, her phone in her hand, her face flushed with excitement. Dorothy, you need to see this. She shows me her phone screen, and I'm looking at a text message exchange. It takes me a moment to understand what I'm seeing, and then my blood turns to ice. The messages are between Cheryl and someone named Kevin, her boyfriend, Ruth explains. A man I've never met because Cheryl's kept that part of her life separate from me. In the texts, dated 2 weeks before she first came to my house with Gerald Patterson, Cheryl writes, "Talk to the lawyer. If we can get Mom declared incompetent, we can sell the house and split the money. Should be enough to cover my debts and still have some left over for us." Kevin's response, "What if she fights it?" Cheryl, "She won't. She's old and trusts me. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late." Ruth got the screenshots from Kevin's sister, who works at the same hospital where Ruth used to work. Apparently, Kevin had been bragging about the money they were about to get, and his sister had thought it sounded suspicious. "Can we use this?" I ask Helen, my heart pounding. "Absolutely," she says, and there's something fierce in her smile. "This is evidence of premeditation and fraud. This changes everything." When court reconvenes, Helen requests permission to submit new evidence. The judge allows it, and I watch Cheryl's face go white as the text messages are entered into the record and displayed on the courtroom screen. "Ms. Mitchell," Helen says, walking toward Cheryl slowly. "Do you recognize these messages?" Cheryl can't speak. She just stares at the screen like she's watching her life implode in real time. "These messages show that 2 weeks before you first approached your mother about deeding her house to you, you were already planning with your boyfriend to have her declared incompetent and sell her property. Isn't that correct?" "I can explain," Cheryl starts. "Please do. Explain to the court how messages about tricking your mother and stealing her house are part of your loving concern for her well-being." Cheryl breaks down completely. Not the pretty, manipulative tears from before, but ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that shake her whole body. "I was desperate," she chokes out. "I didn't know what else to do. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just needed help, and she has so much, and I have nothing. She has what she worked 40 years to earn," Helen says coldly. "And you wanted to take it with lies and legal manipulation because you made bad business decisions." Judge Collins holds up his hand. "That's enough. I've heard enough from everyone." He looks tired suddenly, like this case has aged him. "I'm going to render my decision now." The courtroom goes silent. I can hear my own heartbeat, feel Ruth's hand gripping mine. This court finds no evidence that Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell is suffering from any cognitive impairment that would warrant the appointment of a conservator, the judge begins. "The evidence presented by Dr. Okonkwo is compelling and uncontested by any actual medical evaluation of Mrs. Mitchell." I feel my chest loosen, just a little. "Furthermore," the judge continues, his voice hardening, "this court finds the petition itself to be not only without merit, but potentially fraudulent. The text messages submitted into evidence suggest that Ms. Cheryl Mitchell's motivations were financial rather than protective, and that she engaged in calculated deception to manufacture evidence of her mother's incompetence." Cheryl is crying so hard she's gasping for breath. Her lawyers are stone-faced. "The petition for conservatorship is denied. Moreover, I'm issuing a restraining order preventing Ms. Cheryl Mitchell from contacting her mother or attempting any legal or financial transactions related to Mrs. Mitchell's property for a period of 5 years. If Ms. Mitchell violates this order, she will face criminal charges for elder abuse and attempted fraud." The gavel comes down with a crack that sounds like thunder. I should feel triumphant. I should feel vindicated. Instead, I just feel hollow. I won, but what did I win? My house? Yes. My autonomy? Yes. But I lost my daughter. She's sitting 20 feet away from me, destroyed. And even now, part of me wants to go to her, hold her, tell her it will be okay. But I can't, because it won't be okay. Not for a long time. Maybe not ever. As we leave the courtroom, Ruth and Helen flanking me like bodyguards, I hear Cheryl call out behind me, "Mama, please." I don't turn around. If I turn around, I'll break. So I keep walking, one foot in front of the other, out of the courthouse and into the parking lot, where the afternoon sun is too bright and the air is too cold. Ruth drives me home, and when we pull up to my house still mine, I see something that stops my heart. There's a car in my driveway, Cheryl's car, and sitting on my front porch, despite the restraining order that isn't even an hour old, is my daughter. She stands up when she sees me, and I can see she's still crying. Mascara streaked down her face, her hair coming loose from that tight bun. "I'm calling the police," Ruth says, reaching for her phone. But I stop her. "Wait, just wait." I get out of the car and walk toward my porch, toward my daughter, toward the ruins of everything we used to be. "You can't be here," I say when I'm close enough for her to hear me. "The judge said—" I know what the judge said. Her voice is ragged, broken. "I know I lost. I know I destroyed everything. I just need you to know that I'm sorry, that I love you, that I became someone I don't even recognize, and I'm so sorry. I want to forgive her. God, I want to forgive her so badly it hurts. But forgiveness without consequences isn't forgiveness. It's permission to hurt me again. You need to leave, Cheryl. I don't have anywhere to go." She laughs, but it's a horrible sound, like glass breaking. "Kevin left me when he found out the plan failed. My house is in foreclosure. I'm going to lose everything, just like you almost did. That's not my problem anymore," I say. And I mean it, even though it breaks my heart to mean it. "Please, Mama. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I'm your daughter. I'm your blood. Doesn't that count for something?" I think about James, about what he would say if he were here. I think about all the nights I rocked Cheryl to sleep, all the scraped knees I bandaged, all the tears I dried. I think about the woman I raised and the stranger who tried to steal my life. "It used to," I say finally. "But you taught me that blood isn't enough. Love has to be mutual, trust has to be earned, and you broke both." I walk past her, up my porch steps, and I pull out my key to my house, the one she can never take from me now. I open my door, step inside, and close it behind me without looking back. Through the window, I watch her sit down on the porch steps and cry. I watch Ruth call the police like she threatened to. I watch the squad car pull up, watch the officers talk to Cheryl, watch her finally get in her car and drive away. And then I'm alone in my house, in the silence James and I built, and I wonder if winning can feel so much like losing. If you've ever had to choose between protecting yourself and saving someone you love, you know there's no good choice. There's only the choice you can live with. That night, I can't sleep. I lie in bed staring at the ceiling, and I keep seeing Cheryl's face, the devastation in her eyes. Around midnight, my phone rings. Unknown number. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. "Mrs. Mitchell?" A woman's voice, professional, tired. "This is St. Mary's Hospital. Your daughter Cheryl Mitchell has been admitted. She listed you as her emergency contact. She's asked for you." My heart stops. What happened? She took an overdose of sleeping pills. We pumped her stomach. She's stable now, but she's asking for you. I close my eyes, and I feel the weight of the choice pressing down on me like a physical thing. I could go to her. I could forgive her, help her, pull her back from whatever edge she's standing on. That's what mothers do. But I also know that if I go to her now, if I save her from the consequences of her own actions, she'll never truly change. She'll learn that she can betray me, try to destroy me, and I'll still come running when she calls. "Tell her," I say slowly, each word like pulling teeth, "that I hope she recovers. Tell her I'm glad she's alive, but tell her that when she gets out, she needs to figure out her own life. I can't be part of it anymore." There's a pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure, ma'am? She's very upset." "I'm sure," I say, and I hang up before I can change my mind. I sit in the dark of my bedroom, and I cry harder than I've cried since James died. I cry for the daughter I lost, for the relationship that died in that courtroom, for the innocence I'll never get back. I cry because doing the right thing feels so much like doing the wrong thing that I can't tell the difference anymore. And somewhere across town, in a hospital bed, my daughter is learning the hardest lesson of her life, that actions have consequences, that love has limits, and that some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt. But whether this is her rock bottom or just another step in her descent, that's a story I won't be around to witness, because I'm done being her safety net. I'm done being the solution to problems she created. I'm done sacrificing myself to save someone who tried to sacrifice me first. Tomorrow, I'll wake up in my house. I'll make my coffee the way James taught me. I'll water my garden and read my Bible and live the life I've earned. And if Cheryl ever truly changes, if she ever becomes the woman I raised her to be, maybe someday we'll find our way back to each other. But that someday isn't today. Today, I choose myself, and I'll have to live with what that choice costs both of us. 3 months have passed since the courtroom, and I'm learning what it means to live with ghosts. Not the supernatural kind, but the kind that wear your daughter's face and speak in her voice at 3 a.m. when sleep won't come. The kind that turn every corner of your house into a memory you can't escape. I'm in my kitchen making chamomile tea, the same ritual I've performed every evening for 40 years, when I hear the knock. It's gentle this time, almost apologetic, and my heart knows before my mind does. I set down the kettle and walk to the door, my arthritic hands trembling as I reach for the knob. Through the peephole, I see her. Cheryl looks different, thinner, her hair shorter, no makeup, wearing jeans and a sweater I remember buying her for Christmas 5 years ago. She's not alone. There's a woman with her, older, wearing a lanyard that identifies her as a counselor from New Beginnings Recovery Center. I open the door, but leave the screen door latched between us. A barrier, a boundary. "Hello, Mama," Cheryl says, and her voice is quiet, stripped of all the manipulation I'd grown used to hearing. I know I'm not supposed to be here. I know about the restraining order, but my therapist, Dr. Nicole Warren, she said, "Mrs. Mitchell," the woman interrupts gently. "I'm Dr. Warren. Cheryl has been in our residential program for the past 60 days. Part of her recovery involves making amends to the people she's harmed. I'm here to supervise and ensure this contact is appropriate. If you're not comfortable, we'll leave immediately." I look at my daughter through the screen, and I see something I haven't seen in years. Genuine shame. Not the performative kind she showed the judge, but the real thing that sits in your stomach like lead and won't let you meet your mother's eyes. "You can have 5 minutes," I say, not unlatching the door. On the porch, we settle into an awkward arrangement. Me just inside the threshold, them on the porch chairs Ruth helped me repaint last month. The evening is cooling down, and I can smell Mrs. Henderson's roses from 3 doors down. Everything is so normal, so ordinary, except for the fact that I'm treating my own daughter like a stranger I don't quite trust. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Cheryl begins, and I can hear she's practiced this speech, worked on it with Dr. Warren probably. "I don't expect anything from you. I just need you to know that I'm getting help. Real help. Not just for the pill thing, but for everything. The lying, the manipulation, the way I was willing to destroy you to save myself." I don't say anything. I'm not going to make this easy for her. Dr. Warren says I have something called narcissistic tendencies, combined with financial addiction, that I've been chasing money my whole life because I equated it with worth, with being enough. She laughs bitterly. "Funny how it took losing everything to figure that out. What happened after the hospital?" I ask, because I need to know, even though I told myself I didn't care. "Kevin's sister let me stay with her for a month, but only because she felt guilty about giving Ruth those text messages. The bank foreclosed on my house. My car got repossessed. I ended up at a women's shelter downtown, and that's where I met Dr. Warren. She runs a program for women who've lost everything. Addiction, crime, whatever. I qualified on multiple counts." Dr. Warren speaks up. "Cheryl has been doing intensive therapy, financial counseling, and working through a 12-step program adapted for people who've harmed their families. She's also been volunteering at the shelter, helping other women who are where she was. The transformation has been significant." Transformation, I repeat, tasting the word. It sounds too easy, too clean. Like 60 days can erase 13 months of calculated betrayal. "I'm not transformed," Cheryl says quickly, reading my expression. "I'm just starting to understand how broken I was, how broken I still am. I wanted to come here and tell you that I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm not asking to be let back into your life. I'm just asking you to know that I see what I did. I see it clearly now, and it makes me sick. A car drives by, and we all watch it pass like it's the most interesting thing in the world, grateful for the distraction from this painful conversation. The court documents, Cheryl continues, the things I said about you, the fake medical bills, getting Mrs. Keating to lie. I see all of it now as what it was. Elder abuse, financial exploitation. I was trying to steal from you, and I dressed it up as concern so I could sleep at night. But I couldn't sleep, Mama. I haven't slept right in over a year. Good, I say, and I mean it. You shouldn't sleep well after what you did. She nods, accepting the rebuke. Dr. Warren says part of my recovery is accepting that some relationships can't be repaired, that some things I've broken can't be fixed, and I think you and me, we're one of those broken things. Tears sting my eyes, but I don't let them fall. Yes, I say simply, we are. But I wanted you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be better. Not for you, because I don't deserve to do anything for you anymore, but for me, so I can look at myself in the mirror, so I can be the kind of person my father would have been proud of. The mention of James hits me like a fist to the chest. Your father would be heartbroken, I say. He gave you everything. We both did. I know. Her voice breaks. And I threw it away for money I didn't even get. I destroyed the only people who ever really loved me for debt that's still following me around. I'm the stupidest person alive, Mama, and I have to live with that. Dr. Warren checks her watch. Cheryl, we should go. We don't want to violate the court order. Cheryl stands, and for a moment she looks like she might try to hug me through the screen door, but she stops herself, and I'm grateful. I'm not ready to touch her, to smell her perfume, to feel her arms around me. Maybe I never will be. Thank you for listening, she says. That's more than I deserved. They walk to Dr. Warren's car, and I watch them go. Just before they drive away, Cheryl turns and looks back at the house, and I see her crying silently. Not the manipulative tears, but the real ones that come from genuine loss. I close the door and lean against it, feeling the weight of the conversation settle over me like a blanket. Ruth calls my name from the kitchen. She's been here the whole time, making herself scarce, but staying close in case I needed her. You okay? She asks when I come back. I don't know, I admit. She seemed different. Genuine, maybe. Maybe, Ruth says carefully. Or maybe she's learned to be a better actress. 60 days isn't enough time to fix what was wrong with her, Dorothy. You know that. I do know that. But I also know that tiny, stubborn part of me that will always be her mother is hoping Ruth is wrong. The next 2 weeks pass quietly. I settle back into my routine. Church on Sundays, gardening on Wednesdays, lunch with Ruth on Fridays. I'm learning to enjoy the peace, the lack of looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next legal bomb to drop. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, I get a letter. Not in the mail, but hand-delivered, slipped under my front door while I was at the grocery store. The envelope has my name written in Cheryl's handwriting, and my first instinct is to throw it away without reading it. The restraining order is still in effect. She shouldn't be contacting me at all. But curiosity wins. I sit at my kitchen table and open it with shaking hands. Dear Mama, I know I'm not supposed to write to you, and if you want to report this to the police, I understand. But I needed to tell you something, and I couldn't do it in person with Dr. Warren there. I've been offered a job. It's in Denver, working at a nonprofit that helps women rebuild their credit and financial literacy. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work. And it's something I'm actually qualified to help with now that I've destroyed my own finances and learned from it. I'm taking the job. I'm leaving Virginia in 3 days. And I wanted you to know that I'm not running away this time. I'm running towards something better. A chance to help people who made the same mistakes I did. A chance to do something that matters. Before I go, I need to tell you the truth about something. The $20,000 you and Daddy loaned me for my business. I told you I thought it was a gift, but that was a lie. I always knew it was a loan. I just didn't want to pay it back because I was selfish, and I thought I deserved it more than you did. I can't pay you back now. I have nothing. But I've set up an arrangement with Dr. Warren's program. Every month, 10% of my paycheck will go into an account earmarked for you. At my current salary, it will take me 23 years to pay you back with interest. I'll be 61 years old, but I'm going to do it. Even if you never speak to me again, even if you throw these payments back in my face, I'm going to do it because it's the right thing to do. It's what Daddy would have done. It's what you taught me to do before I forgot who I was supposed to be. I love you, Mama. I know those words don't mean much coming from me anymore, but they're true. I love you, and I'm sorry, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to earn the right to say those words to you again. Your daughter, Cheryl. I read the letter 3 times, and each time I feel something different. Anger that she contacted me. Hope that she might really change. Grief that it came to this. Fear that I'm being manipulated again. I call Helen Garcia, my lawyer, and read her the letter over the phone. Technically, this violates the restraining order, Helen says. We could file a complaint. But Dorothy, if she's really leaving the state, maybe the best thing is to let it go. Let her go. What about the money? I ask. The repayment plan she's talking about. If payments start showing up, we'll deal with it then. But don't count on it. People make a lot of promises when they're trying to rebuild their image. Following through is a different story. I hang up and sit with the letter for a long time. Finally, I do something that surprises even me. I write back, Cheryl, I received your letter. I'm not reporting you for the restraining order violation, but don't contact me again until it expires in 5 years. If you want to rebuild your life, do it. But do it for yourself, not for me. The money you're talking about paying back, send it if you want, but I don't need it. What I needed was a daughter who loved me more than she loved money. I don't have that anymore, and your payments won't change that.